Awesome.
All right, Tom, you ready to rock and roll?
I am, man. It's great to be with you.
It's great to see you. What's going on? You're in Vegas. What are you doing in Vegas?
We are out on a summer-long RV trip. We're in our fifth week, about 5,000 miles on the RV, a couple more thousand on the little tow vehicle, hitting national parks and amusement parks and water parks and like pretty much everything we can as a family, having a good time. So we got caught in a
Oh, that's
massive
beautiful.
rainstorm in Vegas today, so we had to hole up to find some decent internet here.
We appreciate you joining us. So, Tom Goedde, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? Who are you?
Yeah, I'm an old school Seattleite. Grew up in South Seattle. Went to St. Edward's in O'Day High School with Demetrius. D was a year behind me in class and his cousins, and yeah, spent my formative years with those guys, and that's why we're here and involved, and just to send a love and find some justice here.
Right on, my man. Well, absolutely. So, tell us a little bit about what South Seattle's like. What kind of a place is South Seattle?
Changing as it is all over the world. As we grew up, South Seattle is incredibly diverse. St. Edward's, a grade school that we all went to, is probably 10% white. I'd say like 50% black, and it's just a really special place to grow up. Since then, it's diverse. Oh man, I just lost my word. But since that time, it's changed dramatically. But people are still there. The relationships are still there, and we now got to drive for family barbecues that we used to walk to. But that's the way it goes.
I hear you. So St. Edward's, tell us a little bit about St. Edward's. It's a Catholic school. I drove by it, but I know that was a special place for D. I know his really felt at home there. Could you describe what that kind of community was like at St. Edward's?
Yeah, D was always a big figure at St. Ed's. The Catholic school system in Seattle has struggled at times, especially in the more diverse places. And so, he started his grade school at St. Mary's there in the Central District, and then in sixth grade, that closed down, and so he transferred to St. Ed's along with his cousins, who were basically triplets growing up, and they all came to St. Ed's together, and we're all that much better for it. But a great little school that unfortunately after 105 years closed last year. So, that struggle continues in the neighborhood for sure to deliver great education opportunities to underserved communities. But we got the benefit from it certainly, and it prepared us fantastically for O'Day and ultimately Notre Dame as well.
Oh, beautiful. And so describe those triplets. Tell us about D and his cousins.
Yeah, so D was raised by a single mom, and he has two cousins that are in the same grade, Jason Thomas and Jeff Jordan. And I always joked with them that they were triplets because they were always together no matter where they were. And the struggle's real, right? Like, being a single parent is not easy for anybody. So the three moms kind of banded together and raised them all as a village, as they say, and you never saw them apart. Like, it's impossible to see less than two. You never saw anybody alone, and it was usually the three of them. All ended up being just spectacular athletes from the time we met them, obviously, but all played D1 football, as a matter of fact, and great guys, and just happy upbringing, and life was never easy, but it was happy and supportive, and they had great opportunities. So those guys are still very, very special to me, and just good dudes. We're all lucky to know them.
Yeah, it's obvious that they're special to you and you're special to them. And the first time we met was at Aunt Chrissy's house over 3 years ago now, and I'll never forget it. The way you came, the grand entrance, and you also have that ability to light up the room, and everyone was thrilled to, I just wonder, who's that dude? Who's that dude right there? And that's you I'm talking about. So,
man, it's so
and then
fun. Aunt Chrissy's place is such a special place to all of us because, the family barbecues were always there. The after game parties were always there in the basement. And, we just had so much fun at that house through the years. So to be back there and have the opportunity to meet you and understand more about the project, and there's no question that I was getting more involved from the second I heard about it.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. You're very valuable to it, and also want you to know that what you did, like offering to take us to Demo's grave. That I know that was hard for you, and it just really showed. And you knew right where it was. You didn't have to ask where it was. You went in there, and it's a huge cemetery.
Yeah.
But you knew right where it was, and
there are things in life you don't forget, and that's certainly one of them.
Yeah, right on, man. So let's talk a little bit about what you remember, Demetrius. What was he like at St. Ed's? What kind of guy was he?
It's kind of funny because a lot of people that you're talking to, they know the football player first, or they know this giant, like, they called him Adonis and all this stuff down in San Diego. Like, the dude was just huge, and he wasn't that way as a kid. As a matter of fact, he and I were basically the same size, even till after, probably his first year or two at Notre Dame, before he really started to look like a football player. So, what I remember is that smile is what everybody's always going to say. He just had the biggest smile, and you say it lights up a room all the time, but he really did with he was always playful, joking around, clowning, pranking. And then when it came to sports, he would just kind of flip the switch. He'd still be having fun out there. We'd be laughing in the huddle and all those things, and keeping things light. But what a competitor. But as a kid, looking at him, you couldn't even really tell he was an athlete, honestly. He played everything, played, Rainier football from a very, very young age, as early as we were allowed to play. I think it was like 5th grade. But played basketball. He loved playing baseball early on before track took over. So, generally speaking, especially given the circumstance he was growing up in, real happy-go-lucky guy that, just had the future at his doorstep.
Right on. So then you go to Bishop O'Dea, right? And what is that place like? I mean, I've been there, I've seen it, and but I didn't go there, so I can't tell you.
O'Dea is a really special place to all of us. I remain on the board there, have been, and my story is unique at O'Dea because I was an awful student. I mean, really awful student. Barely got into college and found my success later in life. But it's a special place. It's all boys, Catholic, but not your suit and tie prep school type way. O'Dea is in downtown Seattle, literally. There are about 500 students there now. There are about 350 when Dee and I were there. In that 500, there are 93 zip codes represented, and none of them, no student actually lives in the zip code that the school exists in, because it is right downtown. So that means, kids are taking ferries to school. They're busing from 50, 60 miles away. They're riding in with their parents. They're taking the train in. Like, it's a pretty special experience because you get this crazy blend of socioeconomic diversity, and that's one of the things that makes it so special. Is it breaks down walls, because you really do understand what the other young men around you are about. So, yes, the Nordstrom family went there. There's plenty of huge money families. There's also, like 60% of the students are on financial aid of some sort, even though O'Dea is the cheapest Catholic school, least expensive Catholic school in the city of Seattle. So it's a special experience. Like I said, I'm 51 years old now, and I'm still involved. I never really left the brotherhood. So we have a saying there. Our motto is brotherhood for life. And we live it. We hire O'Dea guys first. We meet up on a regular basis. We do stuff like this for our brothers, where if justice needs to be served, we're going to do everything we can to help them.
Well, that's great. And again, I have had the pleasure to meet now several other people that have really stepped up and helped from O'Dea, and I can tell it's more than just a place you go to high school. It's a lot. It's your life. It becomes a real part of it, and not everyone gets to have that. So I know you cherish it and you're proud of it, and it's something that I did experience at some point. But again, I think overall there's a void there, and that's why Notre Dame became such a special place for me, because I met my family for life, and that's taking nothing away from some people, that I went to high school with by any means. I moved around a lot, so it was a little different.
Yeah, there's tons of organizations, especially when you're dealing with youth, that talk about family, talk about brotherhood, talk about things like that. In my experience, they don't always deliver the way O'Day does, but I know that D, felt that way about Notre Dame as well. I talked to him about it. He saw a lot of parallels between Notre Dame and O'Day, the way we treat each other, the way we look out for each other, and if I want to hire somebody, I'm gonna hire an O'Day guy first if I can. So it's a great thing to be part of, and just hope that everyone's blessed with some experience like that at some point in their life.
Yeah. So what are some of your memories from high school, specifically related to you and D? It could be on the field, off the field. It can be both.
Man, I was thinking about this in kind of preparation for the interview, and there's literally hundreds. Like, I used to pick them up and drive them to school a fair amount. We're all in the same local neighborhood there. But honestly, when it comes back, like I can pinpoint like being on the back of the football bus in pads, sweaty, stinky, and DB boxing, and Jason, his cousin Thomas, freestyling over him. That memory of that, which was a daily occurrence. Every time we got on the bus, that's what was going on in the back. And like that, kind of frozen moment in time is really kind of encapsulates my childhood. That's my happy space.
That's beautiful. It's funny, Tom, isn't it? How, you play football, and you guys were really, really a great program when you were there. I think, but it's not really what happens on the field that's so memorable. It's maybe a little moment after practice or in the locker room. That's where the real memories are made, or just like on a break from practice, people goofing around. It's not the actual action that stays with you as much as the, D and Jason rapping in the back of the bus.
It really is, and there's a million highlight reels in my head that I can share, but they're just another highlight reel. Whereas that's what makes it so hard for athletes to transition out of sports. When you walk away from your sport, it shakes who you are, because for so many years it's been I'm John Kouris, tight end. That's what I am. And when people have to walk away, especially people that made it all the way to the NFL, it really challenges them to question who they are. And the thing that they miss most, almost always, is the locker room. I've been lucky to work in sports for the last 25 years, and I get a little bit of a semblance around that. I get to be around the locker room. I'm not part of it, but at least you get to see the camaraderie and see how it works. And that's always the thing we miss the most. It's not getting your head cracked around.
That's for sure.
It's the brotherhood that you form, going to battle. I'm heavily involved in military organizations as well, sit on boards and those types of things. And it's the same thing. Like, those guys travel around the world, see some of the worst things in the world, but have amazing times because of the brothers and sisters that are surrounding them.
Yeah. My great uncle, he was in World War II. He was in Guadalcanal, and, just unimaginable the things that he faced. But his stories would always be talking about how he had to go blow up the latrines, or, what he did on break in the Philippines, and just crazy stories about guys getting tattoos in places I didn't think you could possibly get them, and just drinking and having fun. And, I think I can only imagine what it is, but, you put your life on the line. It's the great unknown. You face it as brothers, and then you see a lot of your brothers losing their lives, and now sisters too. And unimaginable what that does. But also, you know, one thing he did say is like, man, it never was more alive than I was in those moments as well. Like never, people won't understand unless they experience it, but never was I more alive than when I was there with my family, you know, and everything was on the line every second, every day.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's obviously a big transitional issue too and it reminds me of like the Hurt Locker, like, you know, he's shopping in the grocery store and you just know he's going back, you know, it's that the mundane is really difficult. And I think there is a, you know, again, although it's not a life and death thing with professional athletes or even elite college athletes, even high school athletes, the transitioning out of that experience is really difficult and can be a precipitous drop if you don't have the right people in place and the right system in place for yourself to adjust. I mean, you see it. I mean, it's almost like a coin flip in the NFL, like with the guys who can adjust and who can't. And I don't think that's an exaggeration.
It really is. And, you know, frankly, with experience on both sides, both the U.S. government and the NFL don't do a very good job of helping people transition out of their experience. And, you know, on one hand, I get it. I'm a business person, you know, providing resources to individuals who have already served or played isn't where you always want to spend your money. But it's clear in both instances that, you know, we need more help for our vets than we do new missiles and planes and stuff like that. And in the same way,
100%.
the NFL, like, you know, we need better health. You know, we need mental health care. We need transition care. We need professional counseling, all those types of things. And they're starting to do things. They're becoming much more powerful, and the PA is helping a lot on that side. But there's just so much more to be done that you know, we're all anxious to get to a great place.
Absolutely. So let's backtrack a little bit. You know, I've heard people tell me that Demetrius in 1988, 89 is the, you know, most highly recruited athlete to ever come out of Seattle. Mm-hmm. And can you speak to his prowess? You can talk about it however you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, O'Day has a long history of incredible athletes, whether that's Joe Green or Clint Richardson or you know, many others before D. But you know, D stepped on the scene and everybody knew there was something special going on here. And I remember, it's funny because I'm a lifelong Notre Dame fan. I was born Irish and Catholic, and therefore you don't have a whole lot of choice. So you know, being a fan in the inner city as a kid, you know, 10, 12, 13-year-old kid. And then D shows up, and he's a year younger than I am. So I'm a sophomore. He's a freshman. He says, I'm playing at Notre Dame. That's what I'm doing. I was like, what? What are you talking about? Nobody gets to play at Notre Dame. You could be a Husky, you know, you could be a Coug. God forbid we send you to Oregon, but Notre Dame, huh? All right. Like, love to see it, man. Let's do it. And, you know, over the years, I've really thought a lot about what separated D from me and other kind of normal people. And that was his ability to focus. Like, he knew when he stepped in, he's like, I'm going to play at Notre Dame. Like, how the hell did you end up with, like, where did Notre Dame come from? Like, one of your cousins played at Oregon State. They're like, you know, they're all kind of all over the place. They're exposed to, have lots of links to schools. He says, they're the biggest program. They're on TV every weekend. Like, that's who I want to be. Obviously, the '88 national championship didn't hurt. So, yeah, you know, this was the fact that he came out in his freshman year and knew that's where he wanted to go. And I think it was about his junior year when Notre Dame actually started calling. And, you know, like I said, D was not like this imposing force when you looked at him. He was just silky. He was always in the right spot as a tight end. He played tight end and linebacker. And he was a hell of a tight end, by the way. He had incredible hands. And so, you know, on the offensive side, he was pretty silky. Like, he never dropped the ball. The only reason he's not catching is if you hit him early. And, you know, I was a lineman in high school, and so I was playing in front of him, didn't always see what D was doing behind me. But I know he was always on the ball, and his stats were off the charts, like, you know, 16, 18 tackles a game, like every freaking game. So, you know, for a guy that doesn't get to step off the field at all, playing pretty much every down, That's pretty incredible. And, I think that's what the scouts saw, right off the bat was a kid that could, his frame could handle more weight. He didn't have it yet, but his frame could handle more weight. Nice soft hands, a good eye for the ball, super, super smart, very studious, studied like hell.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to catch him out of position on the field. Like he knows where he needs to be.
Yeah.
He needs to be on every play. And that's what made him special. So, like I said earlier, it probably wasn't until like maybe his junior year before he really looked like a football player, because it takes a while to scope that. But he made it a damn long way without that as a freshman starter for the Irish.
Yeah, of course. And really as a freshman, you see his picture, and that's the picture that they chose for the Say Their Name gallery is actually his freshman football picture where he's kneeling. And he's still not where he ended up when I met him, which was chiseled out of, granite basically. And, not an ounce of fat on him. And he took great care of his body. I mean, he was the guy in early lifting, talking 6 a.m. I think sometimes with clothes on, sometimes without, but he, again, and then I saw the student athlete too, again, seeing him in the library when honestly, like we were going there to talk to girls, or mess around. That dude was in the books, not talking to any of us, and he was there all the time because as a freshman, I had to go, I think almost every night we went, first semester. And he was one of the people that you'd see, one of the very few.
Well, remember, you got to remind the audience that this is pre-internet. So like we lived as college students, you kind of had to live in the library, because you just couldn't access everything through your phone or your PC. So, the life of a student athlete back then was significantly more difficult than it is now because you couldn't do a lot of your work from the road. If you got film sessions till 8 p.m., like how late's the library open? Are the resources already all checked out because professor just dropped a new assignment on and everybody runs for the same books. So now you got to get photocopies from guys or convince folks. Like it's not easy, man. It's a lot easier now than it was. And what you're conveying is exactly what we all knew of D. And that's what I was saying. And like that's really what set him apart. It wasn't his athletic skills, it was his ability to focus and know what he needed to do to be successful in whatever realm that was. And he was going to do it.
So you guys both go off to college. You played in college as well. And you played
tiny
with
tiny college.
That's all right. It doesn't matter. How many people go to play in college? And I don't think people realize how hard that is. And it doesn't matter. And because everyone who's playing in college, no matter what division, it's competitive and people are there. I mean, you have to love it. Like if you're like me, non-scholarship, and I'm playing, you have to love it. There has to be an undying love for it. And again, Demetrius treated me and other guys that were like me, 3rd, 4th, 5th string, like we were also first string. He did, but he also, I want to say, he didn't coddle us, and you had to earn his respect. He wasn't just going to, be friends with anybody. And I'm not saying we were even that close like that, but there was a camaraderie off the field a little bit. And just the fact that I was willing to sacrifice my body, I think, maybe that was it. And that was enough. But, there are other guys that I would see, we'd be on the scout team. We'd have a receiver, maybe he was a step or two slow, running across on just going right across the field, a slow drag, and Demo just run up and he just pat him on the shoulder. I mean, other guys would have laid them out. It was like going for an extra serving of lunch, and D was aware like that, focused like that. So looked out for the people that maybe weren't quite as skilled.
Yeah, and D always played in control too, which I think is interesting, especially in that era where, big hits were celebrated. They were everything, right? Like that's what you're out there to do, was to headhunt. And, the coaching now is so different than it was, but he always had that perspective, at least in practice anyway, that, that doesn't do you a whole lot of good to go out and injure your teammates. But you're right. Like, again, what you're conveying is like he had incredibly high expectations of himself. He expected that of others, or he at least expected you to be giving all your effort. And he knew how to get that out of the people. He very much was a player coach out there, which is what you expect from an inside linebacker, right? He's the quarterback of the defense. So, he needs to be that way, but he was naturally that way on his own anyway.
Yeah. I mean, his ability to like be friends with anybody though, like the janitors, and Father Theodore Hesburgh and Lou Holtz and, the trainers. And I mean, across all walks of life, the people in the community, that's the type of guy he was. I mean, I remember about a week into two-a-days, his senior year, I walked up and I said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you, I'm John Kouris." He's like, "Bro, I know who the hell you are." Like, and it's like, "You do?" I mean, and Jeff Burris, who was a star at Notre Dame, was like, "Oh, Demetrius knows who I am." And it's just like,
yeah, it's pretty cool. You're right. He does like the groundskeepers and the maintenance workers. And honestly, in my experience, those are the first people we went to. Like, skip the receiving line and go to the guy that's doing the dishes in the back and be like, "Hey man, you guys doing all right? Like, what can I get you? Anything out here?" He just,
yeah, man.
he always had his head up, looking out for others. Understanding what he needed to do, but that he had extra capacity to make it better for others too. So it's pretty special.
Absolutely, my man. Really, honestly, he just stands out. He just stands out when I look back.
Yeah. And it's not all that much about sports. It's, just his camaraderie and the person he was. So it just makes this,
So,
go ahead.
No, thanks, Tom. So when you went back home to Seattle from college, what were your interactions like?
Pretty light, I mean, he's in the NFL, he's moving around the country, all that stuff. He didn't spend a tremendous amount of time in Seattle after Notre Dame. He went down immediately, was teamed up with John Lynch, who, you guys were playing against each other as John was at Stanford. And then he became roommates during rookie year right away. He stayed in Tampa quite a bit in his years there. I'd see him occasionally, but again, in the Demetrius ways, in a very giving way. Like, he'd go out of his way to come find you just to say hi. Like, "Hey, I don't have a lot of time, but just want to say what's up, and someday we'll be able to hang out more." So yeah, it's pretty light interaction after that, because I left too. Like, so when he left the NFL, I left Seattle and was gone for years, long time. So we had kind of, we just didn't have that much interaction after.
Yeah. When he was in the NFL, did he talk to you at all about his experience and what it was like?
It was pretty superficial. He didn't want to talk about football when he got off the field ever. Like, he wanted to know what was going on with us and what the guys are up to. Did we get to go to the O-Day game? Those kinds of things. So, just he certainly was happy to talk to you about it if that's what you want to talk about. But it's not on the top of his mind. He has a conversation with reporters every day. What's the point of doing it again with friends?
Yeah. So post NFL, you move out of Seattle. So your interaction was pretty sparse. Is that what you're saying after he got out of the NFL?
Yeah. I mean, this is all before social media, right? This is even before texting. Right. So, it wasn't easy to stay in touch at the time. So, not a lot of interaction, right? We occasionally bump into each other at barbecues and that kind of stuff. That's it.
And did you notice anything different about D
after the end
when you'd bump into him? Yeah, after the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely became more serious and kind of straight faced. But I think he was just really trying to figure out what was next. You know, he was in a good position. You know, financially had some cushion that he could explore and kind of rebuild himself. Just wasn't exactly sure what direction that was going to take yet. So it was think of man, you know, I haven't even thought of like when was the actual last time that I saw him live. I think it was before San Diego, but I'm not positive.
Okay. So July 24th, 1999, do you remember where you were and how you heard the news?
Yeah, I was, you know, I was early in my video game career, traveling a ton, and I had just gotten off a red eye. I came home and crashed and woke up at like, I don't know, 6 a.m., turned on the news, and there it was on the Sports Center ticker. You know, which is the worst way to see it because there's no details, there's no nothing. Just, you know, Demetrius DuBose, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Notre Dame captain, killed by police in San Diego. Immediately reached out to family, and you know, the family's trying to figure out what they're doing themselves. Right? It's chaos in those first days, weeks, months, years. But yeah, I remember getting out of bed immediately and going to the office. I was hysterical. Going to the office because my office had internet, so I could go like try to scrounge up some more information. And yeah, I mean that grieving process for you know, me personally, us at O'Day as a community, South Seattle community, and then obviously, you know, the extended family was just it changed the course of all of us forever. And you know, we activated right away, you know, getting a football camp together in his name. We did that for years and years, and it still does exist in some form. But again, at the time, it wasn't a lot that we could do. You know, we had vigils and protests and but you know, it takes years for the courts to kind of work things out and try to get to justice. And ultimately, I don't think we did find justice. And you know, that's what we're working towards now. We're doing what we can.
Yeah, that's right. You know, at the very least, what's happened in the last year, when at least now when you Google Demetrius DuBose, there's another side to the story than there was a year ago, which is, oh, maybe it wasn't just a deranged person attacking the police who was on drugs. Maybe there's something else to this story. Maybe this story fits in, unfortunately, to the last 200 years of so many Black people's stories. And that's, you know, it's a human story. Demetrius is a human story. I want people to understand that. But I also want people to understand, Tom, and I know you're a wild guy. I know I'm a wild guy. Shit, man, if we were Black and we were in that situation, I think we're talking the same thing. We're not having this interview. And if Demetrius is white, he's having the interview talking about us.
Yeah, there's no question. You know, the issues with police and in minority communities are have been underdocumented in all of history. And you know, these incidents are not new to the community. These incidents are new because of cell phones and cameras in pockets. So it's the fact that it's being exposed now. You know, it's a strange place to be. You know, I obviously have friends that are police officers as well. As a matter of fact, one of Dee's closest coaches was a police officer. Vic Miner was an O'Day coach as well, and a very close friend of Dee's. So, you know, the fact that these types of incidents now have been politicized so heavily that, you know, I've even had, like, you started posting links about this interview, and I've gotten emails from O'Day brothers saying, like, this is an embarrassment. Like, we have O'Day brothers in the blue, you're not supporting them. And this had nothing to do with that. And and I'm not going to take it, the bullshit that of anybody that wants to say that, this is not being in support of the police. I'm absolutely in support of good cops.
So am I. And look, my grandfather was a cop. If it wasn't for my dad and my grandfather, when my dad, he worked. My dad's a worker, self-made, is a longtime Big Ten football official. So my grandfather sometimes step in and train me. And he really trained me. And when I moved to Chicago, I meet a lot of people, cops, who have unbelievable stories of heroism, of what they did. This is as political as it is on the outside. From here, this is just, all this is a rehumanization. And to tell of what happened, the truth of what happened. And you know what? And it happened, there are so many other Demetrius DuBoses out there that didn't have the O'Day Brotherhood, that didn't have the Notre Dame Brotherhood, that didn't play in the NFL. And those stories are the ones that are never going to get told. Right. But Demetrius was almost like that. It almost became like that, where his story is never going to get told. And so this is, look, and what I hope happens out of this, because we are in the process of starting a nonprofit in his name, and what needs to happen are members of the law enforcement community and members of the inner city. What we need to start doing is having talks, sitting down and seeing each other as human beings first. And you do that by trying to get a real understanding of each other's stories and of who they are and what they go through every day.
Yeah, there's no question that is a desperate need. And I can tell you just from my own eyes that, when the days of the neighborhood beat cop went away, being a consistent officer in the community, cruising, handing out your Sonic cards, sale Supersonic collectible card to kids or whatever they did in your community. When that kind of stuff went away due to budgets or whatever, that's when the neighborhoods really turn fast. Because if they pull back and they only respond to problems, all of a sudden it's scary to be around a police officer. It's not just, hey, that's my friend Vic, the police officer. It's just all you see is a badge coming at you, and it gets scary, and people run and do dumb things. But you're right. Like we have to get back to a single community where the police are part of the community and not part of the military.
Exactly. And then again, a lot of these police officers who are working the streets, it's like they're following orders, right? They're following directives. So this really has to look, we have to look at it from the inside out and understand, and really seriously, not to make this topic where it's like, we're doing this to say that like the cops are wrong or bad or any of that. That's nothing. I've never said anything like that. And again, like, I see everyone as humans, just like Demetrius did. But he expected to be treated like one too. And that's another thing. So I didn't mean to go on this soapbox with you because I want to, again, but it's important. Like, let's talk about anything. What does anyone want to talk about?
That's the crux of the story is, when he lost it, when he went off is when he started being treated inhumanely. Like, they had already solved the issue. Every party agrees with that. They had already solved the issue. The police decided they needed to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And, every case is unique and every case is different because we're talking in specifics and generalities at the same time, which is kind of dangerous. Every case is unique and different. And obviously there are lots of cases where, suspects are injured or killed where they are in the law. I don't think it was the case in this case. And from all the documents I've read, it's pretty clear, and I don't understand how we got to the verdicts we did. But, as much as I want justice, as much as I want justice, it's not going to bring it back. The hole is still the hole is still in our hearts, and the lessons and the fears that are passed from generation and generation through acts like this will all still exist. But it'll give us an opportunity to get together and toast a victory in his name, and give us some peace of mind. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's better than nothing, which is what the last 20 years got us.
Exactly. And Rita Yonker, who is the bravest woman I've met, who's the only one that was there that stood up and shouted from the rooftops what she saw happened. She told me, she lost her son was murdered. She had a 6-year-old son was murdered by her husband. Okay. And she told me, she said, there just isn't any justice because exactly what you said, they're gone from this earth. I mean, so there are forms of it. And what I think we're talking about, and what I really want to see in that form, is for Demetrius DuBose's name to be restored. And and then to use this story as an educational tool. So the people that aren't from our generation, or even people that were in our generation, didn't really don't follow football, know this story. And I want this story to give pause to what's going on right now, because it's never going to get better if we keep fighting. If we keep, if both sides dig in further, it's never going to get better, because I'm not on any side except the human side and our friend's side. Now, that's for sure. So it's like, this is our captain, man. Like, this happened to our captain, and I can't be quiet about it. All right. I'm not trying to, flip people's lives upside down. I know it's painful for a lot of people to revisit, but it cannot be ignored. All right. And it's as simple as that. And as complicated as that.
It is.
So, this is the part, because we're going long and I could talk to you for hours. But this is the part where you get a chance to say goodbye to Demo, because you didn't get a chance on Earth. So I'd like you to do that now, Tom, if you will.
When I see D again, I'll thank him. I'll thank him for, I'll thank him for showing me the way in a lot of ways in school, despite the fact that he was younger than me. Thank you for the entertainment that he provided me through the years, through his personality and, the times on the back of the bus, as well as, the times through the TV as he's playing around the world. I thank him for guiding me for the last 20 years as, you get in tough spots in your own life and you seek inspiration. He's one that I've gone to continually. And, I want to be clear, like, D and I were not best friends. But D was a hero to me. Like, he lived this life that, I thought I was, that I thought I wanted to be in that life. Everything's worked out great on my side. And, it's just tough that it's tough that it didn't work out great for him. I just want to see this family back together. Like you, I want to see his name restored. I want to be able to walk the halls of O'Day and not have to have a conversation of, is it the right thing to hang a jersey or not, or whatever? Like, how do we celebrate him appropriately? Those kinds of things. I want all that gone. But as you said, none of that will take the pain away. So here we are. But really, my message to D would be a message of thanks, in just a heartfelt way that he impacted my life in every aspect of my life through the years. So I owe a lot to him and his memory.
All right, now's the time where you can say anything about anything, Tom. Whatever comes from your heart.
Yeah, as we were thinking, like I was, I've watched, some of the earlier interviews and what perspective is unique to me. Um, and I think the perspective in this story that's unique to me is really the vision of O'Day, understanding what O'Day means to us on the inside. And then the impact of this family. Like a lot of people don't realize, like this family, Dee's extended family is like Seattle athletic royalty. Um, his two immediate cousins, the other two of the triplets, both D1 players, fantastic guys. Jason Thomas continues to be a pillar in the community. He's a longstanding girls basketball coach at one of the local high schools. His sister Marvina, obviously, Jason's sister Marvina is super heavily involved in the basketball community of Seattle in general, setting up tournaments and camps and all those things. She happens to be married to Sean Kemp as well, which helps a lot with that stuff as well. Jason and Jeff Jordan, incredible athletes, incredible men, contribute to their communities in amazing ways. This family is so important to the history of Seattle. And, for this to happen, it was a light switch moment. Like this family's been through a lot. Like many of the patriarchs passed very early, which is why the guys were growing up without dads. Did not have an easy way, but made an impact on their community. First, just the, South Seattle, Central Seattle community where they lived. And then as DuBose, really across all of Seattle. So this is not just, some random guy walking down the street that this happened to. These are very, very, very well respected people that are still well respected and that still, are still working through their scars from this. We walk in those family barbecues, and it's great to see everybody, but it's not the same. It's not the same because every time everybody gets together now, we just think, would there be little D's running around? And that's pretty hard to face. And so a lot of people in the family don't want to face it, and that's okay. It's everybody's going to deal with the grief in different ways. But all I can say is, in 2 days it'll be 22 years since the incident happened, and man, I get in conversations like this, and the grief button just gets pushed right all over, right back again. At this point, I think I can just accept it. It's just never going to go away. But that's really what I think is unique to my perspective, because this family won't talk about their success and their impact on the community themselves. They're very, very humble. A lot of quiet folks in it, some not so, but always very humble. And that's one thing that I think I bring to this story, is to be able to tell the story of that family and the impact that they had. O'Day would not be O'Day on the athletic side. O'Day would not be where O'Day is today with, a potential #1 NBA draft pick coming next year. And, the success of Nate Burleson and all these guys that have walked those halls. They wouldn't have been there without D, Jeff, and Jason Thomas. So we owe a lot to those guys. And I hope our community surrounds this project in a way that helps them heal in the way that we're all looking to heal.
Yeah, that's right. I appreciate that, Tom. Now I'm going to throw you a little curveball here, because you're the last Zoom interview we're doing with this first project. And I want to also kind of clarify some things. So this project, this is the first quarter of a 4-quarter story that we're going to tell about Demetrius. And it's, the traditional documentary is coming up. We have over an hour edited. It has D has sprinkled his pixie dust on it. It just doesn't make sense that it does and feels as much as it does. And, this, though, I see this piece being in an exhibit and just playing in a continuous loop and having his story written on the wall. and then having pictures on another wall, and then maybe interactive. I don't know yet, but I want this to be an educational piece. Dr. Jeffries from Ohio State mentioned that he's going to put Demetrius DuBose in his curriculum next year and teach his story. And that's what this is about. That's the most important thing of it, right? Getting people to understand who he was and what his name meant, right? So it's not fancy. We do have, like, we're going to film on Saturday with some significant talent, people who have seen this, so it's going to look a little different on Saturday, but still the live feed is going to be done with my cell phone, just like every other thing. At the end, we will edit this into like a 45-minute to 60-minute piece with the bookends of the live interviews and the Zoom. And then we can do whatever we want. I mean, to me, what's really interesting is there are so many other people that still have stories that we haven't talked to. He affected so much that there's no reason that we can't keep talking to people. And because we touched on so many different topics today related to just Demetrius's story. And so he is in so many ways still with us, even though physically he's not, but he has still got his, arms wrapped around a lot of things and a lot of people. But this is the curveball I want to throw you. I want you to ask me anything. You ask me anything, because this is our last one and no one's done that. So, well, John asked me yesterday where I thought what D would be doing, but I want you to ask me anything that comes to mind.
First, I'll give you the opportunity to self-promote a little bit. Like, what does success look like in this project?
Success looks like in this project when I could go to somebody, my son Lucius in his high school, and say, do you know the story of Demetrius DuBose? And they're able to tell me the story of Demetrius DuBose like they're able to tell me the story of Emmett Till. That's what real success looks like in this story. In addition to that, if someone sees this from law enforcement or from the inner city community or from O'Day, who has this opinion that, how could you do this? We got to support the men in blue. Who said that we're not doing that? But this, again, if it can give pause to any of those people and say, wait a second, let me just look at this as a human story. See if they can't relate to it on some level. And if it gives pause, then again, that's a huge success. But you know what else is a success? After I talked, Jackie DuBose. I cried on Aunt Chrissy like she was my mom. Jackie.
And Chris is pretty good about pulling that out of you, by the way. you're not keeping a lot of secrets.
Jackie said,
no. In your business.
That's right. I know. But Jackie said she was proud. And happy, even for a moment, besides the fucking horrible pain that they've had to endure. That is the most important. Because listen, you remember when I was there the first time. Whew. But, just even if some of them feel like I'm a part of their family and they've treated me like that.
This family has earned their calluses in so many ways. But they're all still willing to open up, still willing to expose themselves, still willing to embrace anyone that's willing to help. Because after 20 years, it's pretty easy to kind of be like, well, I guess nothing happened. Like, trial's over. What's next?
Yeah.
So the fact that you've picked up this torch and kind of reignited the passion on the topic and brought all of us back together to talk about it in modern times now, where obviously nothing has changed or very little has changed as far as how the police interact with the community. You know, it's meaningful to all of us. I say us is my very small piece of the family here. But it's great to be doing something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate you, Tom, and I look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully.
Yeah, man.
And I just want you to be okay and know that we're doing everything we can.
Appreciate it, and always here to
Right.
help. All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, John.
Tom.
Appreciate it, man.